I want to know more of what's going on with this oppression. There are those who are like, it's really sad, but I don't have the energy. I don't want to. And then there are others who actually, like, people that claim to be educated, and then especially those that from a people of global majority, those that are either black or from the global south, and they are educated on it, and yet they just like, yeah, I don't care. I'm like, oh, I don't understand. I just think, what are you thinking? You realize your birth was an accident. Like, the situation you're in now could have been a different thing. You could have been that person that was in that country getting bombed.
It's a lottery, literally, where you're born. But it's the individualistic mindset, isn't it? It's not thinking community or collectively, even if they're from collectivist cultures.
I agree. And I think that's the thing. It's like, again, referencing Dr. Naim Akbar, like he calls like self-destructive disorders. You're doing things that are empowering you, but you're destroying the people around you. It's not just that you have self-hatred. You're actually doing things that might destroy the people around you. You just don't care. And I think at the end of the day, as you say, it's that individualistic mindset. As long as I'm good, I don't screw the collective. What has the collective done for me? I don't care. But again, I think this individualistic mindset, it takes away from the fact that we're still judged as a collective. That's just the truth. We are judged as a collective as Black people, and it's never going to change. Just because you might think you're like, the Uncle Tom, you're the good one, you're not like the rest, and you're different. But when push comes to shove, we saw it in like the riots in the UK recently, people will still be like, yeah, they will still see you as different. There's so many things about that incident where they found out so many information that the media was perpetuating that was not even true, making it a race thing where, again, it had nothing to do with race, making it an Islamic thing where it had nothing to do with Islam, and people piggy banking on that, like, yes, finally, let's say we're gonna get rid of all these
our time.
This is our time. For me, I experienced a very visceral fear, even though nothing happened around me, but I was still a bit like, what? Like, really? Yeah. We've had certain things that have happened in the UK, and that didn't even spark riots like this. And I was thinking, wow. So the bottom line is you're still seen as you are not actually from here. You're still seen as inferior. And they still made it like a race issue, even though, as I said, it had nothing to do with race. It's like, how dare this Black man kill these white girls? It was an absolutely horrible incident. I think it was seen as through that lens, because we all know if it was a white man that killed them,
not a race.
It would be mental health.
It would be mental health, right? Exactly. It would be seen as mental health. People would ask the question, what made this person do it? And again, I'm not justifying what this person did, but I'm just saying people would be more curious. Why would someone do that? But it's like with a Black person, there's no question. It's just as if we are inherently violent, or with a Muslim person, they're just inherently evil. And there's a lack of curiosity. But sorry, Hamid, I know you're burning to say something.
Yeah, I am.
Look at his face.
I was thinking of something. It was triggered by something you just said. This individualistic culture is a Western thing. It's a thing that the white people embodied, and like we are taking it on. But when they do something wrong, they're judged individually. Whereas every time we do something wrong, we're judged collectively. We're taking on their culture, but it's not serving us. It's not serving us the way it's serving them. We literally at a disadvantage. Because you're right. Individualism is a Western thing. When someone does something crazy, school shooters and whatnot, it's mental health. What caused this person to do this? If a Black or Muslim or some person does something like that, it's like, oh, this is Black people. So this is why we can't have immigration.
Exactly. It's the whole collective gets judged as they had something to do with perpetuating this behavior. To me, it still goes back to this.
It's almost like they think we're different species.
Samara, you were talking about the history of psychology and eugenics and all these things. When you go back to the core of it, right, when these racial categories were created, it was these polarizations of whiteness, purity, intelligence, all of that. Black people, animalistic, evil, savage. And I think when certain things happen, it's almost like that button just gets triggered. Boom, boom, boom. I told you they're savage. It's like, booyah, we got them. That is how they really are. It still goes back to that polarization. White people, it's because something in their mental capacity, because they're not naturally like that. So it has to be something in their mental capacity that has failed. We still have that.
Whereas for us, it's like, oh, you guys are naturally like that.
Basically.
It's the dehumanization as we're seeing it on different levels, like how the killings are justified now. It's dehumanizing long term, that these influences happen overtly and covertly. It might not be on the level that Palestinians are being dehumanized right now, but that happened once upon a time. And ripple effects still exist today.
Yeah, and also something that just came to mind is like when you were talking about people like selling their souls and we were comparing Africa and all of this stuff, it just made me think even back when we talk about, let's say, Africans that got taken to the Americas. We know that obviously some were captured. There was also some Africans that decided to trade basically, right? Because there was already the slave trade in Africa and they just saw it as a trade. But I don't think the Africans of that time really understood that the level that this is not the same, as the slavery within the continent. But I still think that mentality on some level, even though we understand and our eyes are open and where we know like the impact. But again, some people just close themselves off. They just almost like
survival for themselves.
Exactly. I'm talking more on a political level. Like if we keep embezzling these resources, if we keep being corrupt, these things have an impact on us. I think that Nigeria hasn't really recovered. And again, the state of Nigeria was created by the British and it has never really recovered, as you said, from the ethnic tensions and being just put together with people that we were not all together before, right? There were different empires and there were different things and we were just told, you guys are one country now. Deal with it. That's your business. So there's just so many levels to this.
Very interesting and exciting conversation. And one more thing that you mentioned when we had our phone call was social media and its impact on Nigerians and Black people. When we were talking about the political situation in Africa and how it affects Africans mentally, and I think you mentioned how social media is used to promote the feeling of leaving Africa, getting out, and no loyalty being created between the citizens and the government. Could you expand a little bit more on that?
I'm trying to actually think what we were talking about exactly that day.
From my notes here, we were talking about the whole Jackpot movement, which is people leaving Nigeria. Then we were talking about how there isn't really an understanding between people, Nigerians at least, of this is what we have done as a people. So add a contribution and add to this vision and add to this dream. It's more like, oh, this is what the white people have done for us. We haven't really done anything. With that, you only know what other people have done for you, and it takes away a bit of your own power. And I think that affects the loyalty between you feeling as a part of the country.
Yeah, it's interesting because it just made me think about the notion of citizenship in a sense. Because if you think about it, if you really feel like you're a citizen of a country, you feel like, for example, I'm contributing to the democratic process. What I do can have an impact. My voice can be heard. Even if I, let's say, pay taxes to the state, I'm getting something in return. There's a relationship you have with the state. I don't think, to my knowledge, that there is any such thing in the Nigerian system with the state.
People pay taxes, but you don't get anything back.
I'm not blaming people for this, but I'm just saying there's not a relationship between citizen and state. And yes, no state is perfect. Even within the UK, of course, there are things that many people protest about, debate about, and different things. But there's still a relationship between citizen and state. There's still something where I'm like, okay, I do this, I can at least get this healthcare. Sometimes they say kind of like the state is almost like a nanny. The state is functioning as a body, right? That people go to. If you lose your job, you go to the state. You expect the state to look after you. So there isn't that there. The state is almost operating like a private company, I would say, than a state for people. And then you've got, on the other hand, we live in the age of social media. We live in a time where we can essentially look on our phones and we can see a better life, right? And I think that maybe does make things different from different generations, where people had their own reasons for migrating then, but now we can see this is the life I could get. This is the life I'm living now, right? And that lack of relationship between the state and people also starts on an education level. Education is a form of indoctrination, right? And it can be a good thing in the sense of like, a lot of the time, if you think about state education being free, it's not just for, for altruistic means. It's actually to create citizens who think a certain way, right? When we learn about Henry VIII and we learn about what Queen Victoria did and all these things, it puts a sense of pride in people that actually my people did X, Y, and Z. My people did all of these things, right? They went to here, they explored there, they did the Spanish Armada, or whatever, you had to learn in school about things. And it does create a sense of pride. There was a time in Nigeria that history wasn't even being taught. I don't know if things have changed, but my mum was actually teaching in Nigeria. She told me that they removed history.
That's why I started the basic Nigerian history on the Running Spirit channel.